two accomplished legal minds, though, joining us this afternoon for a little analysis here. Former Massachusetts Attorney General Martha Coakley is here, now with Foley Hoag, LLP, as is Greg Henning from Henning Strategies. Martha, let's start with you. What's your initial reaction to what we just listened to?
So, a chilling recitation by the prosecution on details we hadn't heard about, the planning, etc. And I think, look, the big issue is going to be what is the extent of the mental health here. We still have so little information about postpartum depression and how this works and medications that may work. And the defense, I think, appropriately addressed bail, but also addressed all these other issues. So the bail result makes sense. Not only is she paralyzed, she has no profile of anybody who's likely to flee. And I think the judge made the right call in that, with monitoring on her physical and her mental health and her emotional state. So she will be tended to as the defense counsel asked for. Right,
then the bail means essentially nothing changes for her right now.
Correct.
She stays in the hospital with the potential that eventually she would go to some kind of rehab, 24/7 rehab facility, like they mentioned Spalding Rehab.
That's correct. And probation will stay on top of it. Obviously, the judge is aware of the security issues, including her own mental health issues and suicide ideation.
Yeah, and that's what we heard a lot about, is that she's having suicidal thoughts even now. Greg, what did you make of this whole arraignment?
What you just saw was more like a closing argument at a trial than an arraignment. And I think the prosecution was pushing back on the notion that had been floated in the press by the defense last week, that this is almost a cut and dry case of mental health issues being at the heart of the motivation. And the government laid out really premeditation. They're not just suggesting that she didn't have a mental illness, but that she was planning this, that she was cognizant of her behavior, that she was attempting, I think they said she had created the scenario, to attempting to get her husband out of the house so that she could do the act, which is a horrific thing to think about. But the way it was laid out by the government, it made me actually think about the number of times we heard in the Cohasset case a few months ago, people going through text messages, phone records, and the activities in the hours leading up to an act. It was much more similar to that than I think people were expecting today.
And I think it's important to also note, it was interesting hearing the prosecution kind of mentioning over and over that she was coherent at every turn, that she was, and the phone records when they talked to people that she talked with. Were you surprised that they were going to come out with all of this?
No, the reason it was necessary for the government to do that is they're pushing back on the issue that this wasn't something that was planned, that this wasn't methodical. What they're trying to suggest is very similar to a typical first-degree murder case, that this person had every opportunity to avoid the outcome and didn't. And each one of those methodical acts, ordering food, calling people, checking the distances, looking in your cell phone, writing notes, all of those are going to be used at trial to show that this woman was very much in her right mind, knew what she was doing, and intentionally planned the act. And that is a horrifying thing to think about.
And Martha, let's get your take on that, because a lot of that evidence is circumstantial.
Right.
But if she was timing out how long it takes to the restaurant to get takeout, was calling the CVS ahead of time, not in their town, in Kingston, down the road, she was obviously had a conversation, according to the prosecution, with her husband. He relayed that she sounded like she was in the middle of something. How damning is that for her defense?
Well, that's why initially hearing it, it is very chilling. And yet, because we're dealing with someone who was depressed, the evidence was that with postpartum depression, you have the medication issue. I think people don't really understand how depressed people work. You can still plan things, you can still do things. She may have already decided, I'm going to do this, and was able to function at that level. And we probably all know people who can function even with a medication issue or with depression. And you heard the defense counsel bring in this idea of psychosis, which we had not heard before, that there may have been voices, and that those are mental health issues that will have to be decided by expert witness and maybe ultimately by a jury.
Procedurally, I want to get your take. We heard a list of charges. Only 2 murder charges, not a third. There was assault and battery, there was strangulation, but just charged here with murder of the 2 elder children, not the youngest, the baby, the 8-month-old that later died at the hospital. Why is that?
I think it may be just they didn't update it. In other words, the younger baby, although it sounds like he was essentially brain dead, unfortunately, this is just such a chilling story. And then he died at the hospital, but he was essentially dead. They just haven't updated that because they're talking about doing a probable cause hearing. My guess is they'll go directly to a grand jury, but that charge will be updated first-degree murder.
Of course, Lindsay Clancy was going in virtually. We saw her there on the screen, her attorney talking about she can't emote right now, talking a lot about, of course, postpartum depression, and mentioning the list of medications that she apparently may have been on during the course of a year or so, or however long it's been. What did you make of what he had to say overall when it came to making sure people were aware of that?
He was speaking to an audience that wasn't just the judge, but the people that are watching. And there are a lot of people, as the Attorney General said, that have family members who have had to deal with depression and anxiety and mental health issues. He's speaking to a larger audience. And the bigger point here is Kevin Reddington, the defense attorney, knows that somebody ultimately has to hold a person accountable for this crime in order for people to feel that justice is done. And he's simply changing the direction of that anger. And he's suggesting that the medical professionals that were responsible for her care failed her. That's going to be the boogeyman at trial. That suggests, in my mind, that that is going to be part of the defense, that the medical professionals were the ones who failed.
And Martha, it's a first-degree murder case. How difficult is it in the Commonwealth to find someone or to argue that someone in a first-degree murder case is not criminally responsible for their actions? Because that sounds like, from what Greg says and what has already been floated in the press, that that's the direction that the defense attorney is going to take here.
I think because you've got so many layers here, including the postpartum depression, which we don't have a lot of information on, and we know that we don't have good medications for postpartum depression. We're about to have something approved for that. The issues are multi-layered, and so there will be lots of experts here around the medical health, around the medications, what impact they may have had on top of that, in addition to was there some, postpartum psychosis. And so you will have doctors on both sides of this looking at the facts, and I thought, as chilling as the prosecution's facts were, some of them also could play into an expert witness's account for the defense as to explain the so-called planning and the why she did this. So stay tuned.
A lot more to come.